Preface and Introduction from an Attempt towards an International Language by Dr. Esperanto, Warsaw, Russia, translated by Henry Phillips, Jr., a Secretary of the American Philosophical Society, New York, Henry Holt & Company, 1889. Read for the Librivox Language Learning Collection, Volume 3. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Nicholas James Bridgewater. Quote, "The plan of Dr. Zamenhof, under the nom de plume of Dr. Esperanto, is especially to be recommended in this respect: the formation of the vocabulary, and may be offered as an excellent example of sound judgment. It is remarkable and pleasant to see how easy it is to acquire." End quote. Proceedings of the American Philosophical Society, Volume 25, page 3. Preface by the translator. At the request of the author, I have prepared the following translation of his modest project for an international language, which, in my opinion, goes further towards the solution of the problem than any of the other so-called universal languages as yet offered for public acceptance. I consider it to be the most simple, most natural, and most easy of acquirement of all as yet presented, being based upon modern European tongues. Its vocabulary is mainly already in the possession of every person of any pretensions to education. Its extreme simplicity of grammar, and the ease with which new words can be created, must especially recommend it to every class of readers. The time seems ripe for a combined effort towards the achievement of so glorious an ideal, and we, as beings of intelligent consciousness, should employ our faculties to direct the course of events. Henry Phillips, Jr., Philadelphia, September 17th, 1888. Note: whilst not agreeing with the author in some of his views respecting grammatical formations, yet I have issued this work to show how easily a project of an international language could be made effective. Part 1. It is likely that the eyes of the reader will light upon this pamphlet not without a certain amount of distrust, supposing at first blush that it treats of an utopia utterly impossible of realization. For this reason I would ask him for the moment to set aside any such preconceived idea, and to consider carefully, seriously, and without prejudice the matter of which I intend to treat in the present work. I need not dilate upon the immense importance for humanity of the existence of an international language, one that could be adopted by all nations and be the common property of the whole world, without belonging in any way to any existing nationality. It is pitiful to consider the amount of time and labor continually given to the study of foreign languages, and yet, for all our pains, how often does it happen that when we have crossed the boundaries of our fatherland, we can neither understand those among whom we are thrown, nor make them comprehend what we desire to communicate. How much time, trouble, and money are wasted in the translation of the literary work of a nation! And yet how small a portion of its literature has ever been so reproduced, or will be, even more or less unfaithfully. But if there were in existence an international language all translations could be made into it, and even works written therein, which would possess ipso facto an international character. The impassable wall that separates literatures and peoples would at once crumble into the dust, and all that was written by another nation would be as acceptable as if in our own mother tongue. Reading would prove common to all, and with it would advance education, ideals, convictions, tendencies. The whole world would be as one family. Obliged to economize our leisure in order to pursue perforce the study of several languages, we are not in position to dedicate a sufficient amount of it to any one tongue, so that while on the one side it is rare to know perfectly even one's native language, so on the other no speech can be brought to perfection as it should be. This is the reason why we are so often obliged to appropriate from foreign sources words and phrases. If we do not, we run the risk of expressing ourselves inexactly, and even of thinking incorrectly. The relative poverty of each and every language must be taken into account, from which are often missing the richness and volume desired to be employed in one or another manner. The surest means of remedying this defect seems to me to be simply the possession of only two languages, which would allow an easy mastery, and at the same time each tongue could progress towards the highest perfectioning and development. For speech has been the chief factor and motor in civilization. By it men have been elevated above the level of the brute. The more a language is perfect, the more accessible is a nation to progress. Indeed, the difference of languages is one of the most fruitful sources of the dissensions and differences among nations. For, of all things that impress a stranger in a foreign land, the language is at once the first and the greatest mark of distinction between him and them. Not being able to understand or be understood, we naturally shun the contact of aliens. When we meet, instead of being able to draw instruction from the mutual interchange and comparison of opinions on political and social questions, matured after a long succession of ancestors in their modern homes, as soon as we open our mouths, the first sound we utter shows that we are strangers, the one to the other. Any person who has had the fortune to reside in a town in which he meets citizens of nations often hostile to each other can easily understand and appreciate the enormous service that can be rendered by an international language, one that, without entering at all into the inner life of these peoples, could at least be made serviceable for usual everyday affairs in a land inhabited by diverse nationalities, where the official language differs from that of the race over which it bears sway. It seems useless for me to dilate on the vast importance an international language would bear towards commerce and science. He who has pondered carefully upon this question, were it but for once in his whole life, must of necessity avow that there could be no sacrifice too great to make if we by so doing could acquire an universal language. So, for these reasons, every essay, every attempt in this direction deserves, feeble though it be, our most serious attention. The question I now submit to the public is the result of a labor ripened by long years of thought, and in view of the very importance of the subject, I trust that the reader will read my pamphlet attentively to the end. I have no intention of analyzing all the attempts hitherto made towards the creation of an universal language, but shall content myself with calling the reader's attention to the fact that all these authors have striven to create a system of signs wherewith briefly to communicate thought in case of necessity, or have limited themselves to a natural simplification of grammar, or to exchanging words that now exist in living languages by others made up for the occasion, or taken by chance. The attempts of the first kind were so complicated and so little practicable that they were stillborn. Those of the second class present some resemblance to a language, but possess no features that could give them the right to be called international. Indeed, they seem to have received this name from their inventors from the simple reason that upon the whole habitable globe there exists no spot where even one person dwells with whom communication could be had by means of any of these tongues. All these attempts are based upon the pleasure that their appearance is likely to cause to the world, and upon the unanimous sanction upon which they unhesitatingly rely. But this unanimous sanction is the most difficult of all things to acquire when we take into consideration the utter indifference of the world at large towards these productions of the pen, attempts that do not carry with them any return of profit, immediate and palpable, and which reckon solely upon one's good will to waste one's time for the benefit of the public. The vast majority of people do not bother about such things, and those who do take any interest do not think it worth their while to learn a language which no one understands except its inventor. As soon as the whole world, or perhaps some millions of people, take it in hand to learn, why then I'll do the same. For this reason, appealing to so limited a class, the language finds no adherents and dies at the hour of its birth. If, notwithstanding these difficulties, a language, say for example like Volapük, has obtained a certain number of adherents, it is only because the notion of a universal language is so attractive and so elevating that it finds always enthusiasts who, not considering the probability of success, are willing to sacrifice their time in order to contribute towards the realization of so lofty an ideal. But the number of such students must be always limited, for the world, cold and indifferent, will not give up its leisure solely to be understood by a mere handful of people. And this last attempt, like all that have gone before it, is destined to disappear after a time, leaving no fruits behind. For many years have I pondered over the question of an international language, but not believing myself to be more capable nor more energetic than my predecessors, whose works have borne no results. For a long time I contented myself with making the matter a subject for my constant reflections. But some happy thoughts, the result of my meditations, encouraged me to continue my labors, and incited me to try if I could not systematically surmount all the obstacles in the road of creating and putting into use a rational universal tongue. I believe I have succeeded to a greater or less degree, and I now offer to the kindly judgment of my readers this the fruit of my persevering labor. The principal problems necessary to be solved are the following: 1. The language must be extremely easy, so that it can be learned without any difficulty. 2. Everyone who learns this language must be able to put himself in condition to be understood by people of different nations, whether the language receive an universal approbation or not. That is to say, that this language must be able to serve at the first onset as a veritable intermediary for international relations. 3. Means must be found to overcome the indifference of the bulk of mankind, and to cause the masses to make use of the language offered as a living tongue, and not solely to be used with the aid of a dictionary. Of all the projects offered to the public at different epochs, and often under the sonorous title of an universal language, which they in no way deserved, there has not as yet been a single one that undertook to grapple with more than one of these enunciated propositions, nor even in that case has the success been more than partial. Beyond these problems of which I have spoken, there are others in plenty whose resolution is desirable. But not considering them at present as essential, I shall not enter into their discussion. Before I show the manner in which I have dealt with these questions, I must ask the reader to consider their importance, and not judge hastily of my method, for the sole reason that perhaps to him it appears to be too simple. I say this because I know that the tendency of mankind is to undervalue things that seem simple and easy, and to set store on those whose acquirement has been to them difficult and laborious. Such persons, on seeing so small a work, of such extreme simplicity, on so great a subject, easily comprehended by the whole world, may be inclined to pass it over with contempt or indifference. Yet here has lain the greatest difficulty in the undertaking, the attaining of this very simplicity and conciseness, and the transformation of things from the very complicated forms in which they took their origin into others more simple and more easily comprehensible. To do this, great difficulties have been surmounted. End of Preface and Part 1 Introduction from an Attempt Towards an International Language by Dr. Esperanto. Translated by Henry Phillips Jr. Read by Nicholas James Bridgewater. An Attempt Towards an International Language, Part 1 by L.L. Zamenhof. Translated by Henry Phillips Jr. Read for the Librivox Language Learning Collection, Volume 4. Read by Nicholas James Bridgewater. First problem. My solution of the first problem is as follows. A. I have manipulated the grammar until its forms have reached a simplicity hitherto unheard of, preserving, however, in part, the spirit that pervades the grammars of living tongues, so that its study can be facilitated, and yet that it should in no wise be deprived of clearness, pliability, and exactitude. The entire grammar of my language can be learned perfectly in 1 hour. It can easily be seen how the simplicity of such a grammar will facilitate the study of a language. B. I have created rules for the formation of the words, and by this means I have reduced enormously the quantity of words needful to be learnt, yet without depriving the speech of its richness. On the contrary, I make it still more copious than any of the mother tongues, on account of the ease with which, from any one word, any quantity of others can be formed, so as to express every possible shade of thought. This I do by means of prefixes and suffixes, by whose aid, at will, infinite new words can be created, thus doing away with the necessity of learning each word by itself. For convenience sake, I have given these prefixes and suffixes the signification of independent words, and as such have inserted them in my vocabulary. Example number 1. The prefix mal signifies the reverse of the word to which it is attached. For example, if we know that bona means good, it follows that malbona means bad. So one word instead of two will express the two ideas of goodness and badness. Alta, high; malalta, low. Estimi, to esteem; malestimi, to despise or ill esteem. Dura, hard; maldura, soft. Froida, cold; malfroida, warm, etc., etc. Example number 2. The suffix in indicates the feminine, thus frato, brother; fratino, sister; patro, father; patrino, mother, etc., etc. Example number 3. The suffix il indicates the instrument for an action, thus tranchi, to cut; tranchilo, that which cuts, a knife, etc., etc. I have made a general rule that such words as have already become international, that is, the foreign element, do not undergo any change in my language, only in spelling. So there are many words we do not need to learn, as we already know them. For example, Adam, botany; comedy, disinfect; doctor, emancipate; form, figure; locomotive, monopoly; news, platina; police, telegraph; temperature, theatre; wagon, etc., etc. By means of these rules and certain inherent properties of my language, its study is extremely simple. With 900 words learned, one has learned it from top to bottom, and these 900 words embrace all the grammatical forms, as well as all suffixes and prefixes. With this small supply of words, anyone, without any especial talent or capacity, and even without any operation of the intellect, by aid of the rules, can create all the other words and phrases that are necessary for daily life. Nay more, these 900 words are so chosen that anyone with even the slightest amount of education can learn them with an extreme facility. So the study of this language, rich, harmonious, comprehensible by the whole world, of which the reason will be shown later on, does not demand, like some other tongues, the devotion of years. Indeed, to learn it thoroughly is but the work of a few days. Second problem. The second problem I have arranged as follows. A. I have introduced a complete disarticulation of ideas into independent words, so that the language comprises, in place of words submitted to grammatical forms, only such as are invariable. Take a book written in this language, and you will find that every word reappears always under the same and only guise, which is exactly that by which it is to be found in the dictionary. All the different grammatical forms, all the mutual relations of words among themselves, are expressed by the union of invariable words. But as such a construction of languages is entirely foreign to European nations, [Footnote: Speaking Aryan tongues, translator.] and difficult to acquire, I have adapted this disarticulation to accord with their languages, so that anyone, even one who has not read this manual, or even this preface, not at all indispensable for the study of my language, will find no difference in structure between my invention and his own mother tongue. For example, let us take the word fratino. This is really composed of three words: frat, brother; in, feminine; o, that which is or exists. So the literal translation would be that which is a female brother. The root word is frat. O is the termination of substantives in the nominative case, from which arises the word frato. To form the feminine, the suffix in is added to the root and placed before the case ending. The commas, footnotes, in the vocabulary, etc., the translator has used the hyphen to disarticulate the words, believing it less liable to lead to error than the comma, are used to show the manner in which the word has been put together, thus facilitating its being found in the dictionary. So no trouble is given to the learner as far as the disarticulation of words is concerned. He has no notion that what he calls suffix or affix are really independent words of invariable signification, whether at the beginning, end, or middle of other words; that each of these particles can be employed independently, either as a root or as a grammatical form. From this it results that everything written in the international language can be immediately comprehended in every precise shade of meaning, with or without the aid of a dictionary, not only by those who have no preliminary knowledge of its grammar, but even by those who have never heard of its existence. [Footnote: The translator wrote a letter in this language to a young friend who had previously never seen nor heard of it, enclosing the printed vocabulary. He received an answer in the same tongue, with no other aid. This was a crucial test. For example, suppose I am in England, and although entirely ignorant of the language, yet am obliged to interrogate someone. I write down the following words: Mi ne scias kie mi lasis la bastonon. Ĉu vi ĝin ne vidis? I hand this to him with the International Dictionary and show him the first page, wherein is printed: all that is written in the international tongue can be understood by the aid of the vocabulary. When words are joined together to express a single notion, their component particles are separated by a comma. Thus, fratino, although having but one meaning, is composed of three words, each of which is to be sought for separately. No doubt at first the person addressed, if he has never heard of my invention, will favour me with a broad stare. Then, taking the paper on which I have written, he will institute a hunt in the dictionary with the following results: mi, I; ne, not; scias, sci; no, as, the present indicative in verbs; no, kie, where; mi, I; lasis, las, leave; is, in the past indicative in verbs; la, the; bastonon, baston, stick; o indicates a substantive; n is the accusative ending; ĉu is an interrogative particle; vi, you; ĝin, g, it; n accusative case; ne, not; vidis, vid, to see; is the past indicative. And so the Englishman will easily comprehend the remark: I don't know where I have left the stick, have you not seen it? If he wished to answer, I give him an English International Vocabulary, at the beginning of which is printed: if you desire to express anything in the international language, use this dictionary, in which you will look for the words. For the terminations designating the grammatical forms, consult the appendix concerning the grammar. In this supplement the rules are but of a few lines each, and so the finding of the proper grammatical forms will consume no more time than the hunting up of a word in the dictionary. This matter, apparently so simple, is yet one of prime importance in a practical point of view. It is an evident matter that no one can make himself understood in a foreign language which he has never studied, even with the help of the best dictionary. To use a dictionary, we must know more or less of the language. To find a desired word, we must know its root, yet in speech and writing almost every word is subject to a grammatical change, after which it has undergone so much variation from its original form that it recalls little or nothing of its pristine condition. Often to roots are joined prefixes and suffixes, changing their appearance and signification, so that without a previous knowledge of the language, none of these words as they stand can be found in the dictionary, and if found will either fail to give an exact rendering of the phrase, or else an erroneous one. Take, for example, the phrase I have already given and put into German: Ich weiß nicht, wo ich den Stock gelassen habe. Haben Sie ihn nicht gesehen? Take the dictionary and hunt up the words. This will be the result of your investigations. I white not where I story cane cold-blooded. Property to have she they you not. Here the marks of interrogation stand for grammatical forms not usually to be found in dictionaries. I lay great stress on the fact of the usual vast size of dictionaries of the most common languages, in which after hunting for 2 or 3 words one becomes tired. According to the method of disarticulation that I have introduced, my dictionary is very small and portable. Indeed, in most languages, after having found the word in the dictionary, it becomes a question as to which one of its significations is the correct one to be used in the present instance, and the result is almost determined by chance. Even if one could conceive of a grammar of the utmost simplicity, with an unchangeable signification for each and every word, yet it would certainly be the case that for the person to whom you speak or write to comprehend your meaning by the aid of a dictionary, he must have a preliminary knowledge of the grammar of the language, and be sufficiently versed in its mode of conveying thought to be able to distinguish the root words from those altered by grammatical forms. What advantage could be derived from such a language would depend upon the number of people conversant with it, and if there were none, its utility would be represented by 0. For example, if you are in a railway carriage and you want to find out from your neighbour, how long shall we remain at N? It seems unnatural to ask him, in order to comprehend you, that he must learn the grammar of your language. In the international language you can be understood by everyone you meet, not only if it be unfamiliar to him, but even if he had never previously heard of its existence. A book written in it can be read by anyone without the least preliminary preparation, and without even having read any preface to explain how the vocabulary is to be used. Indeed, any person of ordinary education can read the language at first sight without even needing a dictionary. Desiring to write to a Spaniard at Madrid, but not knowing his language, and he being ignorant of yours, can you risk using the international language, whether it be familiar to him or not, or even if it be totally unheard of? You can do so with the certainty that he cannot possibly fail to comprehend you. The complete dictionary of the words necessary for everyday life, thanks to the method of construction of my language, can be comprised on a single sheet of paper, which can be readily slipped into an ordinary envelope. So there is nothing to do but to write your letter in my language and enclose the vocabulary in Spanish, a matter of a few coppers, and the addressee can certainly make out your letter, for you not only send him a dictionary, but clear and complete instructions how to use it. In it will be found sufficient words for usual purposes, and the method of formation of new words will serve as a model for all others that may be desired. Technical and foreign words will not appear in the vocabulary, as they can be easily replaced. B. Thanks to the construction of the language, I therefore can communicate with anyone I choose, the sole inconvenience being that, until the tongue has become generally known, I must await the process of each phrase being analysed. In order to obviate this as much as possible, I have chosen my stock of words, not at hazard, nor by creation, but have selected words already known to the whole world. Thus such words as are employed indifferently by most civilized peoples I have retained without change. If they sound differently in different languages, I have chosen those already common to 2 or 3 of the most important modern European nations, or those that, although they belong only to one language, yet have a diffused currency. Where the sound varies, I have endeavoured to find one that could be recognized by various peoples. Thus, proche may mean differently in several languages. I therefore return to the Latin proximus, which, more or less altered, appears in the modern tongue, and form from it the word proxime, which can surely be comprehended by every person of a liberal education. In other cases I have taken Latin words bodily, as it has been an almost international tongue for a long period. My only exceptions to this rule have been to avoid cacophony, to simply orthography, or to avoid homonyms. I am sure that in corresponding with an European of medium education, ignorant of the international language, I should certainly not only be understood, but that he would find all he needed in the vocabulary with very little trouble. Third problem. I have finished the analysis of the principal properties of my language. I have demonstrated the advantages it presents to those who shall learn it. I have proved that its success in no wise depends upon the interest that society at large may take in it, that it can with justice be called an international language, even if no one cares to hear it spoken of, that in fact it gives to everyone who learns it the possibility of being understood by any stranger of whatever nationality, provided he can read and write. But my language has still another object. To be international does not suffice. It would be universal. It would like to arrive at that point when it could be spoken fluently by the majority of mankind. To reckon upon the support of the public to reach this end would be to erect an edifice upon a vacillating and fantastic basis, for the public, as a rule, likes that which is already in existence, and is slow to lend a hand to establish any new thing. So I cast about to find out some means of attaining my object, independently of the public support. One method is by an universal suffrage. If everyone who reads my book would carefully reflect upon what I have already stated, he could not fail to reach the conclusion that the study of the international language presents incontestable advantages and would richly reward the very little trouble its acquisition would cost him. Then could I hope that from the very outset my invention would be equipped with a goodly number of adherents. But I prefer to be prepared for the very worst rather than bolster myself up with false hopes and too optimistic anticipations. I suppose that at first but very few persons will find so marked an advantage from the acquisition of this language that they will be willing to waste over it even 1 hour of their time; that the great bulk of my readers will give little or no attention to my work, and not readily make up their minds to enter upon its study. Some may think it will not pay them for their trouble, others may fear to be considered as visionaries, a reproach that in our days most people look on as being a disgrace, and of which, more than anything else, they stand in dread. What shall be done then to encourage this vast mass of indifferent and undecided people to give them an impetus to study this new language? If our looks could penetrate into the souls of these lukewarm persons, no doubt we should behold the following: that while on general principles there is no one opposed to the introduction of an international language, but on the contrary would be greatly pleased with it, yet each one wants this great change to be effected without the least inconvenience or sacrifice on his part; that all of a sudden he should awaken some fine morning and find the whole wide world speaking this new tongue. Were this so, then the most indifferent would haste to master it, because to be deterred by the slight labour of learning a language which possesses so many excellent qualities and is already known by the vast majority of the world would be but a big piece of childishness. Desirous of offering the public a work already finished, and through which, without the faintest effort or sacrifice on anyone's part, the desired result could be achieved, as above set forth, I have made the following arrangement. The present pamphlet will be sent to all parts of the world, and I only ask that each reader into whose hands it may fall, instead of giving time or money to the furtherance of my project, will take his pen in hand and sign one of the blank forms that will be found at the end of this work. These blanks mean as follows: I, the subscriber, promise to learn the international language invented by Dr. Esperanto, if it be shown that 10 millions of persons have given publicly the same promise. On the reverse, the subscriber shall sign clearly his name and address. If there be any who have objections to urge against the principles of my invention, let them return to me the blank with their views, and the word contrao written over its face. If there be those who are willing to learn the language, independent of others making the same promise, let them return it with the words sen condice, unconditionally, similarly inscribed. This mere act of signing demands no effort, calls for no sacrifice, and binds to nothing in case the undertaking should fail. Nothing except to learn the language when 10 millions of others have learnt it. This is very clearly no sacrifice, but only a very simple action, accelerating the fulfilment of the ideal. Every signature gained is a step towards the realization of one of the highest dreams of humanity, without the slightest discomfort on the part of those who make the promise. When the number of those who promise reaches 10 millions, a book will be issued containing all their names and addresses, and the day after its appearance the problem will have been solved. Since the mere signing of this blank form, although tending towards the realization of a sublime ideal, demands of the subscriber no sacrifice, moral or material, and in no way troubles or incommodes him,
It is hoped that no refusals shall take place. Indeed, under the circumstances, to refuse would not be simply a mere negligence, it would be to commit a real sin against humanity itself, and an intentional hindrance to the development of this lofty ideal. But I hope that, for the honour of mankind, very few people can be found who, for petty and insufficient reasons, would block the road to an invention so pregnant with fateful results to the entire globe. If objections exist to the mould in which I have cast the international language, I trust that I shall be fully apprised of them. It is the duty of all persons, of all ages, conditions, sexes, to contribute thus towards its success. As the filling up of one of my blanks will take but a few seconds of time, and the expense of a letter to me can be but a mere trifle. For those into whose hands this work may fall, there can be no excuse for a failure to respond to my reasonings, whether by adhesion to my plan or by contradictory arguments. No one can avail himself by the excuse, "I did not know" of its importance. I therefore respectfully ask that editors shall give my ideas the utmost publicity, and that the general public shall know my claims. Such is the general notion of my invention, and I am far from believing that it is so perfect that it cannot be surpassed, amended, or improved. But according to my idea, it is the best form of an international tongue, and I delayed until I had satisfactorily solved the three problems before I presented it to the public judgment. I am but a mortal, and may easily fall into error, even an unpardonable one. I might omit some element of most extreme importance or advantage. I have therefore decided, before publishing a complete dictionary, issuing a newspaper, etc., to submit for the space of 1 year my plans to the world at large, in the hope that men of letters would give me their views upon my proposal, sending me in writing their objection, if any, and their suggestions for its amelioration. I shall be very grateful for such action, accepting with gratitude all suggestions, and utilizing such as may not be contradictory to the fundamental principles of my language and the facilities it affords for international relations. After all these suggestions have been pondered over and the last changes made, the language will then take on its permanent and definite form. But even if these changes do not entirely give satisfaction, it must be remembered that the language is not entirely finished, but that while the author no longer will have any say in the matter, an academy yet to be constituted will have plenary powers. I now confide to the kindly disposed public this labour that has cost me so much thought, time, and trouble, in the hope that every one to whom the welfare of humanity is dear will afford to my project every possible assistance. Each one can tell, according to his surroundings, in what way he can be useful. I only must insist on the utmost utility of a full vote being obtained. Let everyone do what he can, and before long we shall have arrived at the ideal so long the vision of the learned, a language common to the whole human race. End of the first part. End of An Attempt Towards an International Language, Part 1, by L.L. Zamenhof, translated by Henry Phillips Jr. Recording by Nicholas James Bridgewater. Recorded in Oxford, England. Part 2, Complete Manual of the International Language.
From an Attempt Towards an International Language by Dr. Esperanto. Translated by Henry Phillips Jr. Read for the Librivox Language Learning Collection, Volume 5. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Nicholas James Bridgewater. A. The alphabet. Note: Dr. Esperanto uses for the letters CH, GH, KH, JH, and SH the letters C, G, H, J, S in usual type surmounted by a circumflex accent, which, as no such letters are in a printer's usual stock, we have replaced as above. End note. As in far. B, as in bee. Ts, as in cinnamon. Ch, as in chair. D, as in date. E, as a in make. F, as in fly. G, as in go. J, as J in John. H, as in half. H, as KH. E, as E in me. Y, as Y in yoke. J, as Z in azure. K, as in key. L, as in long. M, as in make. N, as in now. O, as in for. P, as in pay. R, as in rare. S, as in see. Sh, as sh in shine. T, as in tea. U, as double O in fool. W, as ou in mount. V, as in very. Z, as in zenith. B. Parts of speech. 1. There is but one article, la, the definite unchangeable for all genders, numbers, and cases. 2. Substantives are formed by the addition of the suffix o to the root. The plural takes y. There are two cases, the nominative and the objective. The latter is formed from the nominative by the addition of the suffix n. All other cases are made by the use of prepositions, which are followed by the nominative form of the noun. Singular nominative: la patro, the father. Genitive: de la patro, of the father. Dative: alla patro, to the father. Objective: la patron, the father. Ablative: cun la patro, with the father. Plural. Nominative: la patroi, the fathers. Genitive: de la patroi, of the fathers. Dative: alla patroi, to the fathers. Objective: la patroin, the fathers. Ablative: cun la patroi, with the fathers. 3. Adjectives are formed by suffixing a to the root. They take the same changes for case and number as the substantives. The comparative degree is made by prefixing pli, more, the superlative by plei, most. The word than after comparison
is to be translated by ol. Thus, pli blanca ol neĝo, more white than snow. 4. Numerical cardinal adjectives are not declinable. They are unu, one, du, two, tri, three, kvar, four, kvin, five, ses, six, sep, seven, ok, eight, now, nine, and dek, 10, cent, 100, mille, 1000. The tens and hundreds are made by the simple union of the first 10 cardinals. Thus, quincent, 500, tridec, 30, dec octcent octec oc is 1888, etc., etc. Ordinal numerals are formed by means of the adjective termination a. Thus, kvara, fourth. Multiplicative numerals take the suffix obla. Thus, triobla, triple. For numerals that designate fractions, on is to be added. Thus, kvarona, the fourth part. Collective numerals end in op. Thus, kvarope, by fours. Distributive numerals, prefix po. Adverbial nouns can be formed from cardinal numerals. Thus, unuo, unity, due, secondly, kvarone, the fourth. 5. Pronouns. A. The personal are me, I or me. Vi, you, thou, thee. Li, he or him. She or her. G, it. Si, oneself. Ni, we or us. Ili, they or them. Oni, they indefinite, as in they say. The French on. B. Possessive pronouns are formed by the addition of the adjective ending a. Thus, me, mia, mine. Vi, you, via, yours. Li, he, lia, his. All pronouns are declined like substantives. Thus, me, I, mean, me, li, he, lean, him, etc. 6. The verb remains unchangeable in person and number, only changing for tense. Thus, mi faras, I do. Ni faras, we do. La patro faras, the father does. The verb takes the following forms. 1. The present ends in as. Mi faras, I do. 2. The past ends in is. Mi faris, I did or have done. 3. The future ends in os. Mi faros, I shall do. 4. The conditional ends in us. Li farus, he should do. 5. The imperative ends in u. Faru, do. Ni faru, let us do. 6. The infinitive ends in e. Fari, to do. Participles are as follows. A. Active form. 7. Present ends in ante. Farante, doing. 8. Past ends in int. Farinta, having done. 9. Future ends in ont. Faronta, he who shall do. B. Passive form. 10. Present ends in ata. Farata, that which is done. 11. Past ends in ita. Farita, that which has been done. 12. Future ends in ota. Farota, that which shall be done. The passive forms of the verb are composed of the verb to be, est, and the present passive participle followed by the preposition de. Thus, li estas amata de ĉiuj. He is loved by all. 7. Adverbs terminate in e and are compared with pli and plej, the same as adjectives. For example, mia frato cantas pli bone ol mi. My brother sings better than I. 8. All prepositions govern the nominative case. General rules. 1. Pronounce each word as it is written. 2. Accent the syllable before the last. 3. Compound words are formed by the union of independent ones separated by a hyphen, the principal idea being placed at the end. Thus steamship is vaporŝipo, where vapor means steam, sheep, ship, and o is the substantive termination. 4. Double negatives are not allowable. 5. A word designating a place towards which action is directed takes the accusative termination. Thus, kie vi estas? Where are you? Kien vi iras? Whither are you going? 6. Every preposition has a determinate and fixed signification. But where it is needed in a phrase where a choice is not definitely indicated, the preposition ye, having no set meaning, is to be employed. Thus, ĝoji je tio, to rejoice over it; enujo je la patrujo, longing for one's fatherland; ridi je tio, to laugh at it, etc. Every language possesses this indefinite method of usage with more or less damage to the perspicuity of the meaning. Here we only use ye, and indeed where no obscurity is likely to occur the accusative can be used without any preposition. 7. Foreign words change only to conform to my orthography, that is, in the case of primary words. Derivative words had better be formed after my method. Thus, tragedio, but tragedia, tragical; teatro, theater; teatra, theatrical. 8. The termination o of the substantive and a of the article can be elided if desired, as Schiller instead of Schillero, del mondo instead of de la mondo. End of second part. End of part 2, complete manual of the international language, from an attempt towards an international language by Dr. Esperanto, translated by Henry Phillips Jr., read by Nicholas James Bridgewater. Part 3. Specimens of the proposed international language, from an attempt towards an international language by Dr. Esperanto, translated by Henry Phillips Jr., read for the Librivox Language Learning Collection, Volume 5. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. Recording by Nicholas James Bridgewater. 1. Patronia. Patronia, kiu estas en la cielo, sancta estu via nomo, venu regeco via, estu volo via, kiel en la cielo, tiel ankaŭ sur la tero. Panon nian ĉiutagan donu al ni hodiaŭ, kaj pardonu al ni ŝuldojn niajn, kiel ni ankaŭ pardonas al niaj ŝuldantoj. Ne konduku nin en tenton, sed liberigu nin de la malvera, char via estas la regado, la forto, cae la gloro eterne. Amen. Du. El la Biblio, ie la comenzo, Dio creis la terron, cae la cielon, cae la terro estis sen forma cae deserta, cae la mallumo estis super la profundajo, cae la animo de Dio sin portis super la aquo. Cae Dio diris, estu lumo, cae farigis lumo. Cae Dio vidis la lumon, che gi estis bona, cae nomis Dio la lumon tago, cae la mallumon li nomis nocto, cae estis vespero, cae estis mateno, unu tago. Cae Dio diris, estu firmajo inter la aquo, cae gi apartigu aquon de aquo, cae Dio creis la firmajon, quiu estas sub la firmajo, de la aquo quiu estas super la firmajo, cae farigis tiel. Cae Dio nomis la firmajon cielo, cae estis vespero, cae estis mateno, la dua tago. Cae Dio diris, collectu sin la aquo de sub la cielo unu locon, cae montru sin secajo. Cae farigis tiel, cae Dio nomis la secajon terro, cae la collectoin de la aquo li nomis maroi. 3. Letero. Cara amico, mi presentas al mi cian visagion vi faros post la ricevo de mia letero. Vi rigardos la subscribon cae ekcrios, ciu li perdis la sagion? Je cia lingvo li scribis? Cion signifas la folieto cium li aldonis al sia letero? Tranquiligiu mia cara, mia saggio, ciel mi almeno credas, estas tutte en ordo. Mi legis antau quelcae tagoi libreton, sub la nomo Lingvo Internazia. La autoro credigas che per tiu lingvo oni povas esti comprenata de la tutta mondo, se ec la adresito ne sole ne scias la lingvon, sed ec ancao ne audis pri gi. Oni devas sole aldoni alla letero malgrandan folieton nomatan vortaro. Desirante vidi ciu tio estas vera, mi scribas al vi en tiu lingvo, cae mi ec unu vorton ne almetas en alia lingvo, tiel kiel se ni tute ne comprenus unu la lingvon de la alia. Respondu al mi, ciu vi effective comprenis cion mi scribis? Se la afero proponita de la autoro estas effective bona, oni devas per ciui fortoi lin helpi. Ciam mi havos vian respondon, mi sendos al vi la libreton. Montru gin al ciui logiantoi de via urbeto. Sendu gin ciun villagion circa la urbeto, ciun urbon cae urbeton, cie vi nur havas amicoin au conatoin. Estas necesse che grandega nombro da personoi donu sian vocion. Tian post la plei mallonga tempo estos decidita afero, quiu povas porti grandegan utilon alla homa societo. 4. Mia penso. Sur la campo, for del mondo, anta nocto de somero, amichino en la rondo cantas canton pri l'espero, cae pri vivo detruita si racontas compatante
mia vundo retrapita, min doloras resangante. Ĉu vi dormas, ho signoro? Kial tia senmoveco? Ha credeble rememoro ella cara infanezzo, kion diri ne ploranta povis esti parolado, cun fraulino riposanta post somera promenado. Mia penso, cae tormento, cae doloroi, cae esperoi, kiom de mi en silento al vi iris iam oferoi. Kion havis mi plei caran, la iunetson mi ploranta, metis mem sur la altaron de la devo ordonanta. Fairon sentas mi interne, vivi ancao mi desiras, io pelas min eterne, se mi al gaiuloi iras. Se ne placcias alla sorto mia peno cae laboro, venu tui al mi la morto, en espero, sen doloro. Quin el Heine. En sonjo princinon mi vidis, cun vangoi malsecai deploro. Sub arbo subverda ni sidis, tinante sin coro ce coro. De la patro de la viva la crono, por mi gi ne estas havinda. For lia sceptro cae trono, vin mem mi desiras aminda. Neeble sci al mi rediras, in tombo mi estas tenata. Mi nur en la nocto eliras al vi, mia sole amata. Ses. Ho mia cor, ne batu mal tranquille, el mia brusto nun ne saltu for. Iam teni min, ne povas mi facile, ho mia cor, post longa laborado, ĉu mi ne vincos en decida hor? Suffice, tranquilligiu del batado, ho mia cor.
End of section 3 from An Attempt Towards an International Language by Dr. Esperanto, translated by Henry Phillips Jr. Read by Nicholas James Bridgewater.